So tonight, I am going to be calling Julianne Blam. Julianne has been doing theme park stuff forever. She worked for Disney for lots and lots of years. I met her as a show production person. There we go. Okay.
There we are.
Hey, hi, Julianne. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Julianne Blam. So welcome, Julianne, to BOPisodes, which is Born on Purpose episodes. So I'm interviewing great people that figured out what they wanted to do in life and did it. And I did that because I had such a struggle myself figuring out why am I here? What am I doing? What should I be doing? So I figured it would help me and lots of other people to discover how other people found their way. That first question I want to ask you is, tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, your education, your background, that kind of stuff. And then if along that path, if you kind of remember the time when you went, oh, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to direct my life. If there was one, or if it was a combination of things or whatever. But that's what I'm shooting for.
Yes. It's kind of a long story. I was always a musician as a child growing up, and I majored in music in college. I got a degree in vocal performance and a minor in piano. And I thought, well, when I graduate from college, I'll go to New York City and try to get, on Broadway or sing or something like that, because I'd done a lot of acting too. And so I got there and tried it for about 6 months. I went to the Strasberg School of Drama, and I sang with Giancarlo Menotti because I'd been trained in opera, and he took me on as a student. But I just realized that it's a very hard life, and there are, in New York, 1-2% of the people who are in the arts actually make a living in the arts. And I thought, wow, my chances of succeeding in this are small. So I figured, what can I do in New York that I can't do anywhere else? Well, that was work on Wall Street. So I went down and started working on Wall Street for Payne Jackson Curtis. And
I didn't have no idea. Wow, so you were in the financial world. That's incredible. Go ahead.
And I started working on my MBA at NYU, Graduate School of Business, the Tisch School. And really enjoyed it. Ended up getting a job with a division of IBM selling computer timesharing, when computers were the size of, your kitchen. And the software was, very big and cumbersome, so nobody could buy these things. No businesses could. And so you would rent time and rent the software on a large computer. So I used to sell that to the financial and the insurance industry for IBM. And then I met somebody, and he got transferred to Hong Kong, so we moved to Hong Kong and got married, and I was no longer working. I was working in television, actually. I was a news anchor in one of the Hong Kong English-speaking stations. So I really enjoyed that, but then he got transferred back to Los Angeles, and that again is a highly competitive market for television, and thought, I don't have the credentials really. I had camera time, but I didn't have a lot of credentials. So I thought, well, I'll go back to my finance and computer skills and get a job somewhere. Well, there were two places really hiring. One was Lockheed to be a defense contractor, and the other was Disney because they were building Epcot.
Wow.
And I thought, I'll try to get a job at Disney. And there was one, they needed a computer time-sharing manager to help all the engineers access computers and learn how to use the software and things like that. So that's what I did during building Epcot. And it was, fairly satisfying, but what it did give me was a huge look at how Disney manage their projects, because I worked with engineers and architects, not so much with creative people, a lot of the financial execs, things like that. And when Disney downscaled after building Epcot, they didn't need all these people, but they kept 400 younger people to say, okay, you're going to be our next generation. I said, okay. Well, during that time, computers also changed. They got smaller, they sit at your desk, and my job kind of got phased out. But they said, what she did a lot of was do financial analysis, take huge databases and bring them down to manageable size and access them. So I worked for the chairman of the board of Disney, analyzing future new projects, analyzing cost data, and how we spent our money when we built a project, et cetera. And they said, well, okay, she's got some building blocks to be a project manager. So they gave me a very, about a 6-month course. And, it was just going to each department head and what do you do? How does your workflow, et cetera. So then I finally got to be a project manager. And at that point, it was like, this is what I really like to do. I really liked understanding how the projects came together, analyzing where you get each component, working with the creative people, and they dream and sketch and draw and write, and getting the ideas out of them. Well, then somebody has to figure out, well, how do you build that? And so the project manager at Disney, or the show producer, they're the person who gets to sit down with all the special effects people and how do we do this? Can we invent that part? Is this existing? How much will it cost? And so I just loved that. And I really loved the field work. So when we built the MGM Disney Studio Tour in Florida, that I did about 20% of that project as a project manager for Disney. And that's when I realized this is what I really love to do.
Wow. So that you took both sides of the spectrum. I mean, you started out at the total art entertainment side, and then you went total full-on business side. And then did you feel like you were wandering at the time, or would you? What I mean?
Oh yeah. I really did. And one time, a lot of people from Disney will remember this gentleman named John Hench, who was a legend at Disney, and he worked on the first Disney parks for Walt and had been in animation for years. And I was about 32 when John had this thing about reading people's palms, and I think he really liked to read pretty girls' palms.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So he was reading my palm. In fact, I still have a scar on my hand from where he jabbed me with the pencil. But he said, when you're about 36, you will find what it is you really want to do. So just hang in there. You'll figure it out. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, it was 36.
Wow.
But yes, I felt like I was wandering because things, I enjoyed what I did, but it wasn't like a passion. It wasn't like, wow, this is really fun. But what it did is it established certain building blocks for me. And I think one of the keys to my personal success in this is that I did start in the arts, because one of the things that I sort of built my career on was that I could talk to both sides of the table. I understood where the artists were coming from, and I understood what it is to have to create a piece of music in my case. And sometimes you work through it and this just part of it isn't right, or sometimes it takes a long time to get the right idea and to toss things out. And so it's that sort of delicate balance from pushing an artist to giving him back off time to go create and work through problems, or giving him something else to focus on, because a lot of times in the back of their mind they're solving that problem. They don't even know they're doing it. Sometimes It happens in their sleep. But it's kind of watching how each person's creative process and how they go through it, understanding that, and being able to talk about what the design is to a group of financial people who are, it's all pro formas and financial schedules and things like that. to give them the merits of why they should invest in that.
Yeah, well, nuts and bolts, bringing those two ends together. I mean, that's people. You know, I came to the whole theme park thing not really realizing it was a thing, but there's a ton of money in it, you know, and there's a lot of organization. It's all financial stuff, it's development stuff. It's the whole spectrum of things, and you spanned the whole thing. I mean, you went from the art all the way to, you know, and you brought it all kind of together. Think back. Close your eyes a second and think back. Was there that time when you I don't know, maybe you pulled up that spreadsheet or you had just finished a meeting or, you know, I can imagine you going, wait, this is what all the things that I've been doing has led to. Was there...
come together? Well, I think it was during my first real project managing experience. One of the things that the way I approach a project is through the schedule. And it's assembling, well, what's this activity and how long does this take? And who will be doing that? And how much will that cost? And what do I need to actually complete that? And then, you know, working through, that's how I come to understand a project. And it felt very familiar to me because when I was working on my MBA, the class I really loved the most was operational procedures.
Wow.
And you do a lot of scheduling and manufacturer planning, you know, all in hypotheticals. But it was like, oh, I really love that process. And so when I got into projects and got to do that, it felt very familiar and very something I really like to do, to make order of the chaos, to put things into concise little boxes so that you can see the pattern of how it all works. So I think that was the moment where I said, oh yeah, this is for me. And then when you take a project to the field, when it's actually starting to go into installation, that's a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed that. So when I finally got to take something and watch it plug into a facility, or to help build the facility so that you know it would plug into it.
You started out with computers that were as big as the kitchen, you know, and
right.
now we have, you know, these little tiny things that can probably do more than the kitchen did, you know. So
yes,
you watched that change in the industry, and you also watched Disney kind of grow up. If Disney was a kid from infancy when Walt started Disney to when you joined it, at what age would you say you joined that kid's life? And of course now we know it as this bustling senior thing that's growing, continues to grow. But what sort of age level did you watch, and what were the changes?
Well, I joined Disney in 1980.
Okay.
And it was still owned pretty much by the family. They were the controlling shareholders. Ron Miller, Disney's son-in-law, was chairman at that point. They had been a movie company who got very sleepy, and then they had a theme park. So they had Disneyland and Magic Kingdom in Florida. They had a few hotels, but it was Michael and Frank were not involved at all, and they had become a target of leveraged buyout. And
oh my, okay.
That was after we opened Epcot. So there was a lot of turmoil and angst as to what was going to happen to the Disney company, because the plan was to do the leveraged buyout of this Mickey, I forget his name, and sell off all the various parts, the animation catalog, the live action catalog, the studio, the theme parks. So, and I was working for the Chairman Board during that time, so it was a very exciting time and very angst-ridden. But what we saw was the transformation of Disney from a kind of family-held, sleepy company to shareholder value is the most thing. So, and you kind of go, well, that's because Michael and Frank owned a lot of the shares, and the people that who actually saved the company, the Bass family, they had a lot of stake in the company now too. So,
Wow.
then it was, we've got to get back to being a movie company. We get back to doing live, real pictures. And then the creation of intellectual property that we could then exploit in the theme parks. So it became a real business. I mean, synergy was the word that we used all the time, that, we all had to create assets for the other. It became a real business. And with that, you kind of have some things that go awry. Good example was, we used to have what we called aspirational retail in the theme parks. You had the beautiful clock store, and you had antique store, and you had some things where they sold very expensive pieces, and people didn't buy a lot of it, but it was the aspirational retail, and then people would go buy sweatshirt. Well, there became a very business-driven, plush sells $800 per square foot, and this aspirational retail only sells $20 a square foot. We've got to change it all over. Well, then pretty soon you lose the magic, because basically the MBAs have taken over the park. Right. So we went through that phase too, and so I think I actually joined it as a teenager, and now I think the park, Disney, is probably only in their middle ages.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because the people who have been at the helm, Michael Eisner, Bob Iger, Michael was a film man, television too. He worked for ABC. Iger was pretty much a TV guy who went into film. But now at the head of the company is a theme park guy. And unfortunately, he's inherited the company at a very bad time. The theme parks are closed, but he's done the right thing. So it'll be interesting to see how Disney pulls themselves out of this. Luckily, they've got the new Disney home cable channel. Right. And
that'll do well.
So these days, assets for that. They will be in everybody's living room.
Yeah.
If you have children, I'm sure it's close to 10 hours a day. Yeah. So.
Well, I grew up with, Walt came on every Sunday. For me as a kid, he was, every Sunday there was the Walt. I don't remember the name of it, but I just remember, we were going to watch Walt Disney.
The Wonderful World of Color.
That's right. That's what it was. Yeah, and he came on.
Oh, that's when finally color TVs, but I don't remember what it was before then. Just Walt Disney. Well, I remember Mickey Mouse Club when I was a kid. And I think that was why when I got to LA and looked at what I could do back in the, like 1980, it was like, oh, Disney. Disney's a fun company. I've always liked that product. I'll just get a job at Disney. Get a job, any job.
Did you just?
Luckily, I had something that they were looking for.
So you walked in and it was like that, or did you have to do a bunch of interviews, or did you just kind of right time, right place?
You have to do a bunch of interviews to
okay, sure.
Yes, I had to work not only in Imagineering, which they called WED at that point, for Walter Elias Disney, but I also had to interview at corporate, because the whole computer industry within Disney was run from the corporate perspective. So from parks to the design studios to animation to the business services, all of that was under one umbrella in corporate.
Wow. Tremendous changes, that whole, because you rode that. I always thought of Disney as this creative thing, because the way my exposure to Disney was, I didn't ever work directly with Disney. I was sometimes a vendor to them, and their art directors were notoriously powerful, compared to other clients that I had, where the business side of it was in the production, and project management side was more powerful. But at Disney, the art directors ruled. So it was all about the quality end of the product. But you kind of watched that, that balancing act that happened between business and art and creativity and profitability and all that kind of stuff that happened. So you were in a unique position to view all that. Wow.
and that actually, living through that, I've seen it both ways. And I've always thought it was better when you have the art director in charge, because that's where the vision comes from. If you haven't got something that's fun to go see, people are going to go see. It doesn't matter if you brought it in on budget.
Yeah.
I liked it when the art director was in charge. But the key to that was getting a partnership between the art director and the project manager. And a lot of that is having a project manager who can ferret out the solutions to the problems. The art director is so busy, inspecting our quality and looking at every little detail of how it looks, that the project manager, especially in the early stages, is the ones who can say, well, we could use this technology to do that, or we could use this technology, this one's going to cost you less, so it'll save you money here, because you're working within a budget they want to hit so that they can have the right profitability. So it really is, to me, it was the key of having a really good partnership up front where some real key decisions are being made so that you can put in the right building blocks. I also think about project management as putting up a scaffold that people can walk around and go up and down and over and across, so that people on the team know what their job is and how they interact with the other people in the team. So to me, that was always another really key point of bringing in a successful product, is have a team that really interfaces well, who understands that, this is not competition, this is not combative. We're really here to try to find a way to get this vision made into a reality within this box of money and time. And so, we're all on the same team. We're not fighting for, our architectural style or whatever that might be. We're fighting for total vision, total experience in the end. So, and that's why I always try to choose my team members very carefully.
Sure. I totally agree with you in there in the sense that vision, that heart, that passion is going to come from the art side, from the creative dreamer, and I've always been kind of one of those characters. I don't claim to be really good at it, but what I do claim about that is I'm really bad at the other part. So the organization, and I mean I'm not terrible at it, but it's just, that's not as fun. It's not as, but it's totally needed. It's totally necessary, because you do need the box. The creative people do need the box to kind of, because otherwise they continue to create and make it better and better and better. But you never end up with a product, because there's a time when you put down the pencils. Okay.
Exactly.
You put down the crayons. We're gonna,
The drop the pencil phenomenon. The way I've learned to handle that is just redirect attention. Okay. Redirect attention of the art director to something, because there's always a problem that needs solving. You kind of go, okay, that's good enough. Now let's go over here and work there.
That's brilliant. I'm going to write that down, Julianne, because that is a good key, because that's one of the things. The creative guys are always problem solvers, so you just kind of give them a new problem that you could control.
A new problem. Because there's always a new one.
Yeah, there's always going to be one there for them, a new challenge to keep them from holding up the works. Wow, that's brilliant. Okay, so those are obviously those were the challenges, and and the kind of the opportunities that happened. What are the other challenges? I mean, right now, of course, there's big challenges in our world, with this whole quarantine thing and everything's closing down. But what do you see the big challenges coming up in the future for this whole sort of theme park industry? What experience can you give us from, the growing pains that Disney went through, and how we're going to handle this upcoming, next 10 years or so? Tough question.
Well, that is a tough question, especially because in light of the coronavirus. What will the marketplace do? Are people going to rush back? An analogy is sort of like the 9/11 catastrophe. I mean, that was the first time the Disney parks had ever really closed for anything. And they were empty because nobody was putting their child on a plane to fly anywhere at that point.
Sure.
And the people who at least saved Walt Disney World were the Brits, because they all have a lot of vacation homes and condos and things like that are owned by British citizens. And so they spent the winter coming to Disney and really helping them regain. But in this case, unless full, social distancing is very hard to do in theme park.
Yeah.
So maybe queue management will have to change and things like that. But you have to get people trust again that it's okay to come out and be with other people. The other thing that I kind of in the back of my mind think is that maybe there will be more role for virtual theme park kinds of things, or an experience that maybe starts in a different place and ends in a theme park at a specific amount of time. I don't know. There's so much of the theme park experience now that it is computer generated and media based. You're riding basically a tube of different films going up and down, like the Harry Potter rides, or like the Dreaming rides, the big got an OmniMax screen and then the big platform of riders that goes up and down. So I would expect to see more media-based and maybe virtual-based. I don't know. It will be interesting to see how they handle crowd and people managed, because that's where the key probably is allowing people to keep their safe social distance, but yet be in a park like that. It'll be interesting to see what the movies do. I mean, the fact that people are going to be watching more and more movies at home over this period could, install a lot of new habits. I mean, you even see Netflix and Amazon, they've got a huge production capacity now, because they realized, well, that's the key, is get your intellectual property and your creative content produced by yourself. So
that will be the challenge.
Sure, that's all
yeah. Well, people are scratching their heads now. I'm in China, as you know, and it seems like we've come through it. You can't really be sure.
Yeah.
But they took action quickly here, and we had a kind of a difficult 2 months, but we're hard back into it, and the public memory isn't. It's not very long.
No.
Once we get back into our routines and the swing of things, and all the shops are pretty much open now. Everybody still wears their mask, but we're out doing the normal stuff that we were doing before, from 2 months ago. And during that hardship for 2 months, cleaned it out. It kind of slammed the door on what it was for there, but I don't see that happening in the rest of the world, which concerns me. But at some point we'll get through it, we'll pop out the other side. And then I think things will kind of gently go back together. And we'll pick up where we kind of left off. I hope, I hope. I think.
I hope,
yeah.
Well, the whole hammer and dance theory of this is that you try very hard to hammer the virus back into submission, which I think China did a very good job of. I mean, closing Wuhan down and keeping people out and keeping people sequestered for 2 months. And then you've got the longer period of the dance where it kind of shows itself back against the virus, and you've got to go back into sequestration. And the object being to really buy us time, to not deplete our resources up front, and to be able to buy us time until there is a vaccine. So the vaccine will probably be the part that eventually allows people to kind of go back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, and our own immune systems will probably kick in. That's the thing that will, us humans are fairly resilient, so we'll do a little bit of a clean out maybe and then get back to it.
Yeah, the idea of herd inoculation, or, you get enough people within a society who've had it, it protects the whole herd.
Right.
So we'll probably approach that at some point too in the next year. But for a company like Disney, you look at that and go, it has so many different arms of entertainment and merchandise and everything, that it will survive. It will just concentrate on those areas where it can make money until the theme parks reopen.
Sure, and then and like you say, you'll diversify, and there's always room for movies, production movies and telling stories and people like that, and we now have this way through the computers and streaming and so forth, where they could get in with a controlled group, like your team that would be producing the movie, and make sure everybody's happy and healthy in that group, make a movie. And they could go in the park and make a movie because the park's closed now. So
it's true.
So they
great time to do a movie in a closed theme park.
That's right. So we should throw that out there so people get the idea to take advantage of this thing. Get the film crews together and get out there.
Park as movie location, movie
That's
set.
right. It's much cheaper now, guys. So the chance that you were going to go close down Disney to make your movie just wasn't. There was no opportunity like that before. But now's the time.
Actually, a funny story about kind of alluding to that is when we were doing the MGM theme park, there was this whole thing where we had sound stages, post-production facilities, etc. And there was a catwalk up above. It was enclosed, but it was an attraction where we showed people how movies were made, from shooting on a film stage to shooting in a water special effects set, etc. Well, what really happened was the stars who were supposed to be shooting things did not like the fact that there were people up there watching them in their deck. So, the stars come in their rollers and their robes and things like that, and then the people are blowing them out, or their hair or whatever, putting their makeup on just before they go into the stage. The stars didn't like it. So it all kind of crumbled. You do not get to watch how movies are made.
Yeah, you don't get to go backstage unless you're special. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so.
The thing that they didn't really get to shoot was the Mouseketeers, the new Mouseketeers.
Oh, okay.
And of course you had Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera. They were all, these little Mouseketeers, and they kind of came up through the.
Wow. See, that whole industry, there's so many things that blossomed from that little creative seed that happened, and a whole generation of entertainment, and there's so many things that we kind of take for granted. It seems like these guys came out of nowhere, but they were working.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, they were working for years and years. I mean, how many people started out in Paramount Park being the little street entertainer type character, because they wanted to be an actor and that was the only job they could get, and then they carried through, to be whatever.
That's why I did not continue in acting or singing. There were a lot of those kind of jobs.
So what other mistakes did you see happen in this industry? That's kind of a fun question too. Is
one mistake I think Disney did avoid fairly well was the idea of regional entertainment parks. We call them, what did we call them? Because I worked on the feasibility of these things for a couple of years with the Jim Rouse organization as a partner to Disney. And Disney finally said, no, if you do too many regional things, you start supplanting the need to see a theme park.
Okay.
So we never really invested in that. But the family entertainment things. I think they are in direct competition with the Disney theme parks because they do give people an outlet that they normally would have had to go to a Universal or a SeaWorld or a Disney to go see. But if they can, the kiddies on a amusement park ride nearby home, they don't have to go to Disney park.
And it's less expensive, and you could fit it in the schedule a little bit easier. You didn't have to plan a whole vacation for a week and all that kind of stuff. If you could run down the street on the weekend and do something,
Right.
Well, that's interesting.
Exactly. Maybe the Disney going into Hong Kong and not building a big enough park to attract a large enough audience, and maybe you're putting yourself in a situation where you're not sure what the Chinese government and Hong Kong, how they're getting along, and can the people leave China just to go to Hong Kong and have that experience. On the other hand, they had such a wonderful experience in the Japanese parks. I mean,
wow.
They had the perfect partner. They built 2 gorgeous parks. And the temperament of the Japanese people embracing the Disney characters, it was just like a perfect union.
Yeah, that is the best theme park on the planet, in my opinion. Disney Sea.
Mine too.
Yeah, it just
the Tokyo Disney Seas.
Yeah, and
absolutely the best theme park on the planet.
I went to Disneyland first time in 1964. In Anaheim,
really?
In the California thing. I was there, and wow, I was a little kid, and it was amazing. And I had that same wonder when I went to Japan and went to the Disney Sea, because they had really knocked it out of the park in terms of
they really did.
This industry. Yeah. It is an absolute polished jewel there's just none other.
It's a great team, and part of what was interesting about that, Steve Kirk and his brother Tim and that whole team, they kind of worked stealth. They were not during Disney. You kind of you knew what was going on. It was sort of like, well, okay. And they were working with the Japanese, and there was sort of a small group of approvals. It wasn't this huge, top-heavy thing that Disney can often do, and it went quickly. And the other interesting thing was that the lead designer, one of the Kirk brothers, the team around him were like family and had been for a long time. Some were actually family members, so they had a really great ability to communicate in shorthand with each other, and they understood each other's design sensibilities, and they really worked as a cohesive unit. They were good. Now, when the production ended, it was a very demanding production as far as getting the rides done and the show elements done and all of that. And they brought in some of the old hands like Orlando Fronte, and they brought in the old, Epcot guys who had gone on to run the departments later on and had since retired.
Wow.
And they brought them back in and said, we need to really hit the ground running on this. So
the value of all that experience.
And the Japanese, were just great partners. They knew in the end that they had a market that would embrace what they were doing. So they did not cheese out anywhere around that park. They put the money.
And the culture, like you said, the Japanese culture, it just embraces that whole, I don't know, they're just kind of made together. The one complaint I do have one complaint about Disney Sea. It was, when it was time to eat, it was hard to get food, because they just didn't quite have enough food and beverage, to handle the throngs of people that all get hungry at the same time.
Right.
That was my only complaint about it, was they should have done more F&B.
that is one of those planning parameters when you're planning how a theme park is partitioned up. You do have to take into account how people eat.
Yeah.
And in America, we do kind of snacking all day long, so the parameters are one thing. In Europe, it's an extended eating period, so you tend to plan differently. And I think they didn't understand that Japanese are more, we must eat now. This is the hour we eat. We're going to eat now. We're going to spend this amount of time. And little variation in that between families.
Yeah.
It's all pretty much the same. So
so
right.
Part of that cultural thing is a difference there. What do you see? I mean, after we get past this crisis, where do you see the theme park industry kind of going? What do you think is going to be? I think there always needs to be a place for friends and family to get. It can't all be virtual. We can't just look at the screen, and we can't just glue ourselves to our phones. There has to be that social time. So I think there will always be a room for that. But tell us what you think. What do you think future-wise?
One thing about the virtual world is it is easy to repurpose an existing attraction by substituting new media in. So I think for a while, because of cost issues, you'll see more of that. You'll see new flying theater, media. I don't know if you would see a new Harry Potter ride, but Harry Potter, that ride is what brings people in. But I think you'll tend to see a lot of more of the media-based things change themselves out because it's something that is easy to do, something that they can spend not as much money as building a whole thing and still advertise it to have people come in and see it. I also think one of the things that is enduringly popular in the parks is, kind of just old entertainment, are the parades and the live shows. People love to go to those parades. People, and the fireworks at the end, and they all kind of started out with trying to extend your length of stay in a park because they realized the longer you stay, the more apt you were to spend more money. You buy the popcorn, you have the hamburger, you maybe would catch it for a T-shirt or whatever. But in and of themselves, those things became real gems. The electrical parade. Remember when it finally showed up at Disney? Wow. It was like everybody had to stay to see the electrical.
Absolutely.
The fire show. It was it's magical. So just a lot of the basics are things parks can do to get people to stay, to get people to come. The live stage shows, they're generally always packed. If you get a name entertainer there who is coming to do something, or just a really good stage show. I mean, I remember the Barbie stage show at Epcot. It was kind of misplaced. You wonder why Barbie and Epcot. They probably would have been better in the Magic Kingdom. It was very popular. That sort of thing, people just love to come and see. It's another reason to go to the park. The other thing I think that Disney invoked, and I would think a lot of other groups will do this, are the seasonal festivals. Disney has the Food Festival, which is incredibly appealing, and it just brings all kinds of people out. And it's just a quick overlay to Epcot. It's not a huge investment. It's got a lot of working parts, operational, so that takes some time to figure out and to get right. At the Disney Studio Tour, the Christmas show, the Osborne Family Light Show, everybody comes to see that. So the little seasonal things that people can do, that the parks can do to kind of increase their attendance. And just keep doing that and bringing people back till you have the capital to do the next big thing. And I'm sure that will be technology driven, because most everything is technology driven these days. But you can't forget the old entertainment value that why people come, that social space to all look at something together. It's kind of a difference between watching a movie at home and watching a movie in a theater. You know, when you watch a movie in a theater with a group of other people, it's a shared communal experience, and you feed off of each other, even though you're not talking to each other. That shared sense of emotion, or surprise, or whatever, it heightens the experience of the movie. And I think it's the same in a theme park. When you're standing there in a Epcot or Magic Kingdom fireworks show at the end of the night, and Magic Kingdom, and Tinkerbell flies, and it's like, oh my God, all the kids, you see tears in their eyes because they remember when, and they can look at their kid having that same magic, and it's old-fashioned entertainment, but it's still work.
Hopefully that future is going to stay with us. I think, with that's always something that we, that was one of the things that always blew my skirt up about what I did. As hard as things got during the process of building, or the politics of doing this or whatever, or trying to get that, there was a time when you walked out, when it was done and it was operating, and you get to turn around and see the looks on people's faces. When
exactly.
Because we watched the whole thing grow up out of nothing, and watched all the bits and pieces, and know what all the fights are and what all the challenges were. Then when it finally happens, and you get to kind of turn around and look at this is why we did this. When you see when you and then it's amazing because it refreshes your viewpoint. It's like when I take my son and I go look at one of the attractions or something that we made, I look at it through his eyes, and it's way different,
Yeah. It's way different.
Yeah.
You no longer see that sprinkler cap up on top of the ceiling.
Yeah.
They never paint that thing.
Yeah, so all of a sudden that stuff fades away.
Yeah. It's kind of like you finally dropped the pencil.
Yeah, you finally get to drop the pencil and take the other viewpoint. So down to anybody that's interested in this sort of a life that Julianne and I have shared a little bit of together, and I'm grateful for that. How would someone? It's changed when we got into it.
It really has.
Yeah, we didn't really know it was a thing. It sort of snuck up on us, and then we got involved with it. Nowadays, you can get a degree in theme park stuff, and hospitality and stuff like that. But what would you recommend? Is there something that you would recommend if somebody's interested in this life that we're talking about?
It's sort of like nowadays you need some training in whatever art form or whatever business arm you are going into. So you probably would have to get a degree in something, be that finance, architecture, be that engineering trade, be that art. In my day, a lot of people who were directors came from stage theater. They were lighting directors, or they were set designers, or they were, they had gotten a degree in theater arts. Because at that point, rides were just really rolling through set pieces,
right.
Lighting them directly to focus your attention. So I would say that's still a worthwhile endeavor, is get a good training in whatever form gives you passion. And then the idea would be to get kind of like I did. If you want to get into theme parks, which was not my aim, but it's what I ended up doing, is get a job, any job, in a theme park design company, or, if you'd rather work in the parks themselves, an operation company. Design is where we are. And go out and make yourself known, and talk to people, and have lunch with them, and ask them what they do, and try to find a mentor, or 2 or 3 mentors, or somebody you care and want to sit at the foot of and lessons. Because in the end, if you want to advance, you're going to have somebody up near the top. So look at that person over there. They've got, talent, because it's a huge field, and there are a lot of people who are trying to get into it. So a lot of times it's not what you know, it's who you know,
Yeah.
but you have to have the chops to be able to actually deliver when your time on stage comes, you know.
Valuable stuff, universal advice. No matter, even if you didn't want to do theme park, you know, take those same principles of it, wherever you want to go. Do those, learn your chops, do the fundamentals, get in the proximity of it, and find the mentors. You know, and then shine a little bit. You know, because like you say,
Be a good team member.
Yeah, and
Be a really good team member, because the thing about building a theme park these days is it takes huge teams of people. It's not just, you know, putting on a stage and a few lights and a little sound system and away we go. I mean, it's all kinds of engineering trades. So having the opportunity to learn what other people do and learn what kind of problems you should bring to them to solve, and, you know, it is. And being appreciative of what they do, understanding that they're doing things you could never figure out,
right.
And why it's important to have that on the team. You know, being a good team member is another really key point in putting a project together.
I agree. And part of that training as a team member is knowing where your part is. And, you know, and first of all, kind of knowing what all the parts are. That's a huge challenge these days, because there's a lot of different parts. But kind of knowing how they fit together, even though you're not an expert over there, you know you need it. You know, and I think that's some of the mistakes that the Chinese guys that are kind of getting into this business don't realize what all the parts are, and they don't know why they need them. You know, so and then until, you know, it hits them in the face and they go, oh my God, we've got this whole thing missing. What do we do now? Okay, well, thank you very, very, very much, Julianne. It's wonderful to take some time with you, and I'm sure we'll do this some more. And I also want to get your talented and handsome husband maybe to do one of these too. Completely different field, you know, because you know, not in the theme park thing. Yeah. So he did aircraft control, which I don't know that much. I know they exist, but I don't know really, you know, what's a day in the life of an aircraft control. Yeah, right. But, so maybe we can convince Mark to do one of these too. That would be great. I'd love that.
Okay. I'm sure you'd be happy to. Bob, good to see you again.
Okay,
Take
Julian.
care.
Thanks so much, and thanks again. We'll talk to you very soon. Take care. Be safe.
All right. Bye-bye.